Hello and welcome. I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines of this hour. Police say an 18-year-old woman killed her mother and stepbrother before opening fire at her former school in Tumbler Ridge, British Columbia. 9 people, including the suspect who died by suicide, are dead in one of Canada's deadliest mass shootings. The motive is unknown. Nearly 127 million voters head to the polls in Bangladesh, a key test of democracy after Sheikh Hasina was ousted in a 2024 student uprising. The race pits the BNP against Jamat-e-Islami-led coalition as voters also decide on a new national charter. President Donald Trump says talks with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu produced no definitive agreement on Iran. Netanyahu says Israel's security must be protected and signals no clear US commitment to expand talks beyond Iran's nuclear program. An advisor to Iran's supreme leader says Tehran will not compromise on its missile capabilities amid ongoing talks with the United States. Ali Shamkhani calls the missile program non-negotiable during events marking the anniversary of the Islamic Revolution. Pro-Palestinian protesters rally in Melbourne on the final day of Israeli President Isaac Herzog's visit, after clashes in Sydney and demonstrations in Canberra. Protesters unite across the country as Prime Minister Anthony Albanese hosts the visit following a deadly Sydney shooting. Ukrainian officials say Kyiv is under a massive Russian missile attack, with explosions reported and buildings hit across the capital. Emergency teams are deployed and no casualties are so far confirmed. Elsewhere, Ukrainian officials say Russian strikes kill 4 civilians in 3 villages in the Dnipropetrovsk region. The governor says multiple people are wounded in the attacks, including a woman and a man whose wife is also killed. The US House votes 219 to 211 to reject Donald Trump's tariffs on Canadian goods, with 6 Republicans joining Democrats in a rare rebuke. The measure now moves to the Senate but faces a likely presidential veto if it reaches the White House. Those are the top headlines for the hour, but we start in the United States, and US Attorney General Pam Bondi faced a fiery congressional hearing defending the Justice Department's handling of the Jeffrey Epstein files. Lawmakers accused the Justice Department of failing to properly redact names, even releasing explicit images of survivors. Bondi apologized for the abuse they suffered, but rejected claims of misconduct, saying any errors were corrected immediately. Republicans also pressed her on redactions of names not legally protected. Congressman Thomas Massie called the issue bigger than Watergate and demanded accountability. Lawmakers questioned references to Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, formerly Prince Andrew, in the files. Bondi said past prosecutors should answer why no changes were filed. She was also challenged over federal agents fatally shooting 2 people in Minneapolis earlier this year. Bondi defended the administration's actions and its immigration crackdown. Joining us to discuss this hearing is Ross Feingold, a political analyst. He joins us live from Taipei in Taiwan. Ross, thank you first of all very much for joining us. Pam Bondi seemingly seemed rattled by this congressional hearing. The voices were raised multiple times. This comes as the Department of Justice faces much scrutiny, both over that handling of the Minneapolis killings earlier this year, but of course the topic which is central, the handling of the Epstein files. how do you think she did in answering those questions, particularly at those most heated of points?
I'm probably not going to be the only person who says that. Most importantly, she is testifying to satisfy an audience of one, and that's President Trump, because he is her boss. And he would certainly expect her to be combative with the questioning of Democrats. So frankly, I think President Trump is going to be quite satisfied with the way she responded and defended her positions and defended the actions of the Trump administration. Obviously, Democrats are going to take an extremely different view. And that's just the nature of our partisanship in the United States. But again, I think as far as her boss is concerned, President Trump, he's going to feel that she did a great job.
And what about how people will be viewing this internationally? Of course, the Epstein files are making waves around the world, from Europe to South Asia to South America. How damaging is it internationally when allegations of a cover-up are made by fringe actors, but not by fringe actors, but elected lawmakers, as they have been here, including Thomas Massie, a Republican lawmaker?
This issue is far from over. That's probably the one definitive thing we could say at the moment. Where it goes from here, we simply don't know. We don't know whose names have yet to be discussed in the public space. Names of prominent people, whether business people, politicians, from the worlds of art, entertainment, or academia. But names keep coming out as people make their way through these millions of pages of documents. And then the other thing we don't know is as people's interactions with Epstein are revealed and discussed publicly, what will be the ramifications for those people? Now, one thing we've seen clearly in recent days is that the ramifications for individuals in Europe, whether from politics or other spheres, has clearly been more severe than for people in the United States in recent days. Now, that's not to say people in the United States haven't faced ramifications. For example, former Treasury Secretary Summers gave up his teaching job at Harvard because of the emails that he exchanged with Epstein. So it's not that people are completely without ramifications, but when it comes to one that's in the news at the moment, Secretary of Commerce Lutnick, and some people are calling on him to resign, and the administration is standing behind him at the moment. If this was in Europe, as we've seen with Mandelson or aides to Prime Minister Starmer, people have resigned. So that process is definitely far from over, and it will continue to be in a matter of intense debate why some people in the United States are not facing the same political cost as they are in Europe.
Yes, Ross, do stay with us as we move north for our next story. And in Canada, a shooting at Tumbler Ridge Secondary School has left 9 people dead, including the suspect, Jesse Van Rootselaar. Among the victims is 12-year-old Kylie Smith, identified by her father, Lance Young, as one of the students killed in the attack. Young described his daughter as a passionate student with a love for art and anime. He also spoke about the panic his family felt with his son, Ethan, hiding in a closet during the incident. The secondary school, with fewer than 175 students, is in shock after the tragedy. Let's listen into what the father of Kylie Smith had to say.
She was just a beautiful soul. She's a light in our family. She loved art and anime. She wanted to go to school in Toronto, and we just loved her so much. She was thriving in high school. She never hurt her soul. She was a supporter, LGBTQ supporter, and she was the last person who ever deserved this. I let her off. I let her go to school with her brother Ethan in the morning, and I soaked in that moment, watching them walk in the door together for whatever reason, and I didn't know it would be the last time they'd go to school together.
Ross Feingold joins us once again. Ross, of course, a tragic incident in British Columbia, Canada, with the fallout continuing. The political ramifications of something like this, do you think this exposes weaknesses in Canada's firearm policy?
Certainly, that will be a point of discussion among local authorities, legislators, whether at the provincial or at the federal government level. But generally, we do perceive Canada as having strong firearms regulations and laws. Probably what will also be a focus of debate here is whether or not the mental health system was sufficient, whether support within the school system for possibly troubled students was sufficient. And then an issue that always comes up in these situations is facility security as well, and whether or not more should be done with regard to facility safety. So I would expect that there will be a lot of detailed discussion and possibly new laws and regulations that come out of this tragic incident as well.
Yes, and of course, Mark Carney, he's made a statement following the incident. What more can you tell us about leadership in a time for Canada like this? A liberal democracy, of course, doesn't have the same gun laws as America has, especially when it comes to school shootings. How do we expect him to react to this terrible tragedy?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. So he's already canceled an overseas trip in the aftermath of this, where he was supposed to give a speech in Europe. So he's clearly trying to play the role of somebody who knows how to show empathy for a tragedy that has happened, make available the resources of his government. He does have an image of being a somewhat of a technocrat, a banker, because he is a banker by profession. So this will be a chance for him to show more of his personal side, and that he knows how to be the leader in a tragic situation. I think he'll probably come through this showing that he has that ability. But once this issue recedes from the news, he's still going to be in the hot spot over the major issue, which is Canada's relations with the United States.
Ross, do stay with us once again. As we turn it over to our next story, we stay in Canada. And Ottawa is advising its citizens to avoid all non-essential travel to Cuba. Canadians currently in the country are urged to leave while commercial flights are still available. The government is working with airlines to help travellers return home. Global Affairs Canada consular officials are also ready to provide support for those in need. We now turn over to Europe's defining crisis for further updates. And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has recently emphasized that Europe needs stronger arguments, not just talk, to pressure Russia into peace. Meanwhile, European Union's foreign policy chief, Kaja Kallas, suggested a tougher stance on Russia in upcoming negotiations. Report suggests that the European Union is working on a sustainable peace plan to push Russia into a deal and considering giving Ukraine partial membership in the coming year. Ross Feingold joins us once again. Ross, thank you very much for joining us. Of course, we hear statements from Zelensky like this all the time. However, the players that seem to matter in this, of course, the United States and Moscow. Do you think that the United States takes Europe seriously in these talks, these diplomatic negotiations that have been going on for over a year now? We're, of course, now seeing trilateral talks between Russia, Ukraine and the United States. Europe doesn't have an invite yet. What do you think of these comments by the Ukrainian president?
The reality is that President Trump is leading this process, and he's been trying to do so ever since he took office a little over a year ago. He always made clear that he thought he could end the war within a day. Obviously, that did not come to pass. But to be fair to President Trump, he's continued to be very personally involved through his own meetings or phone calls with the relevant leaders, or by dispatching his negotiating team and special envoys to negotiate with the two sides. But there has not been much of a role for Europe in the negotiations. That being said, and also I think to be fair to President Trump, it's clear that one, Europe is providing weapons to Ukraine, and President Trump made that clear that he would not give weapons to Ukraine, but he agreed that Europe could continue to buy from the United States and then pass those weapons to Ukraine. So President Trump is involved and engaged with the Europeans in that aspect. And also, it does appear that as part of a settlement, and this is one of the contentious issues of the negotiations, that the Europeans have committed to putting troops on the ground. Now, they might not be at the front line. They might be posted in other parts of Ukraine further away from the front line in order to obtain Russia's agreement to this. But again, it is part of the negotiating process and the discussions. And I would expect that the United States is telling the Russians that we've discussed this with Europe, and Europe is willing to do this, and you have to accept that. So again, Europe is relevant to this, even if they're not literally in the room at the moment.
It is about those two issues, though, foreign troops on the ground. But of course, the EU voted against using those frozen Russian assets, 210 billion euros worth, to aid Ukraine. Now, that option is off the table for the European Union and Europe as a continent against Moscow. Is Moscow taking Europe as a body seriously anymore?
As long as some of the major European countries continue to provide weapons to Ukraine, and if they're not funding that through the Russian assets, they're still funding that through other funding sources, through their general revenues or other sources. So as long as Europe continues to provide weapons to Ukraine, then of course Russia needs to take that seriously, because it allows Ukraine to remain in the fight and not to surrender. And also, as long as some of the European countries say that they are willing to put troops on the ground after or as part of any settlement framework, then Russia has to take that seriously. And again, I do think the United States in the negotiations is telling Russia that you have to accept this. Europe is willing to do it. It's just part of any deal if there is a deal to be reached.
Ross Feingold, thank you so much for taking the time. Pleasure, as always. We have some breaking news coming in now, and fresh visuals have just emerged of a small plane shot at while landing in Indonesia's South Papua province. 2 pilots were killed when the Smart Air Senesa ground caravan was targeted while approaching Karawai airstrip on Wednesday morning. The flight, which had about 10 adult passengers and an infant on board, departed the Tanah Merah, and authorities confirm that all passengers survived unharmed. Troops have been deployed in the area as investigations continue into the group responsible for the attack. We'll continue to bring you all the news updates coming from that story as the day moves forward. But now over to the Indian subcontinent, and polling is underway in Bangladesh as voters take part in a general election amid heightened political tension and security. Shafiqur Rahman, leader of the Jamat-e-Islami, has described the election as a turning point for the country, calling on supporters to participate and push for political change. Now let's listen in to what Shafiqur Rahman had to say.
For me, for Bangladesh. For you and for Bangladesh. Yes, it is a turning point, and we are fighting for that point, inshallah. People's demand change, they desire change, we also desire the change.
Interim leader Muhammad Yunus has also cast his vote, urging citizens to take part in the democratic process as polls remain open across the country. The vote comes as opposition parties raise concerns over the fairness of the process, while authorities say tight security is in place. Results are expected after polls close. Joining us to discuss the Bangladesh election, which polls open today, is Prashanta Kumar Shil, a political commentator. He joins us live from the Bangladeshi capital of Dhaka. Thank you very much for joining us. What's the mood right now in the Bangladeshi capital? There was obviously fears going into this from neighbouring countries that this election was going to be free and fair, but the first election since the ouster of Sheikh Hasina in 2024. What's the overall feeling in the capital right now?
Yes, people are very excited to giving their vote, especially after the already mentioned there is some revelation from 2024, the 5th August. There is an former Prime Minister, ouster Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. So this is a very important and crucial point, and also that the call the in Bangladesh actually is a Gen Z or Gen Z revelation in Bangladesh. So this is a very first time vote after the that kind of revelation in the world. We have to see the people of the world are just waiting to see what is happening in Bangladesh election. Is it a very credible and a very fair election is possible or not possible? People are waiting to see. That after the Bangladesh election, the next election may be the Nepal. The same scenario the after the revelation of Gen Z or Gen Z revelation. So this is a very one kind of history, but you see that the narration of the Bangladesh, especially the political party of now the present starting who want to come in front of the reform to government. One is the BNP and another is the Jamat-e-Islami. Two allies party are here. They just demand the one to come from in the power. But the scenario see that the Jamaat is once upon a time there is an ally of the BNP. Their 1971 to their vote bank is very nominal figure, 10%, 5%, 6%. But now in 2026, the demand they are one to in front of the power. So this is a history, and this is a very much equation. That the Jamat-e-Islam is now in the present time, present election from that they have in very supreme gear, just confront of the power because they haven't cherished their ideological thought. They can just cherish their the vote bank list and everything they can calculate it. If I am very not surprised if they are to win this election. So this is very truth. And another observation, that the BMP, the pioneer leader of Begum Jia, he died from couple of months ago. So this is a very crucial touch point for the BMP if they revise that from the in the hand of Tariq Rahman. But Tariq Rahman is
Yes.
not a very ruler and very touch-based politician, leader from Bangladesh. So this is what a house issue. People the voters are very scared from some issues. But the politics, that the politics and very environment in Bangladesh, the voting environment is very tough.
Okay,
Because there
Prashanta,
is
of course there has been concerns throughout the region that this democracy these elections will not be free and fair. In the broader South Asian context, is Bangladesh consolidating democracy here?
It's a very tough question, actually. That the present election is without the major political party is Awami League. So Awami League is banned from this election commission and everything. It's a 30 years from history. They are not participate in elections. So this is a very crucial. I don't know how you can mention to tell about denied without the Awami League election is fair and credible and everything, because all the people and the foreign alliance and everything, they have to mention the several times from inclusive election. So people are want to inclusive. If you have a fair, free, and everything dynamic election, you have to do offer every party. You have to if you have a complaint, some political leader, especially the Awami League leader, you just want to give the punishment for that from our legal law. But why you can ban a political party? This is not very credible from the fair and democratic of the election voting cap. And another issue, you see that how Bangladesh, the history, that the history, there is some Bangladesh voting people history, there is a two-party system voting casting. So the people who are the support your political team is not from decided by you. It's not from decided by the current event. They're decided your hierarchy. What is your grandfather support? What is your grandmother support? And what is your grandfather support? And what is your father support? So there is a chronological hierarchy system. The two-party hierarchy system in Bangladesh. One is BMP and one is Awami League. So if you avoid Awami League, it's very tough to call.
Prashanta, apologies, we are running out of time. Thank you so much for joining us, Prashanta Kumar Shil here on NewsX World. It's a great pleasure to talk to you, as always. We now turn on to a related development and coming out of Bangladesh. As per reports, a Hindu tea garden worker has been found dead in Bangladesh's Mulvibazar district just a day before voting, raising fresh concerns over minority safety ahead of the election. A 28-year-old man was reportedly discovered with his hands tied and multiple deep wounds on his body. The police have said that the blood was still oozing from injuries when the body was found. Co-workers have alleged murder, pointing to signs of foul play. Police have launched an investigation and are examining whether the killing was election-related. The incident comes days after another Hindu businessman was killed in a separate attack as Bangladesh votes in a high-stakes general election. We move on now, and James Van Der Beek, the actor we all know from Dawson's Creek, has sadly passed away at aged 48. His family shared the news on his Instagram, remembering him as a loving husband, father and friend, and asking for privacy as they grieve. In 2024, James revealed he'd been diagnosed with bowel cancer and was planning to auction off some of his memorabilia to help with treatment costs. Before acting, he was into sports, but a football injury led him to acting. Despite his success, he often spoke about the struggles of balancing personal life with the pressures of public attention. Well, that is all that we have time for this hour. Keep watching NewsX World for more international news updates.